Alright, welcome to episode 4 of Middle-Aged Metalhead. That's episode 4. Never really thought I'd get this far. And today, since we are in the new year finally and said tada bye-bye to 2020, and for the first episode of 2021, I figured I'd do something a little different. Today, let's talk about a few movies. So today's episode is going to be my 10 favorite horror movies from 2020 across the world, really, not sticking to any one particular geography. And in 2020, horror has been fantastic as a genre. I mean, some really good movies have come out, and this list is based purely on what I enjoyed the most. And I'm not really looking at anything apart from did the movie entertain me in any way, and that was all I cared about. Remember, it's my list. If you don't agree with it, that's absolutely fine. And I'd love to see your lists. So if you've seen a ton of horror movies this year, then go ahead and let me know in the comments what I've missed out on and any other recommendations that you might have. So without wasting too much time, let's get started. Okay, so at number 10 is a movie called Welcome Home. It's an Indian movie. The language is in Marathi and Hindi, and a little bit of English as well here and there, but mainly Marathi and Hindi. And this one's called Welcome Home. It's written by first-timer Ankita Narang and directed by this guy called Pushkar Mahabal, who, according to IMDb, has directed a whole lot of TV, but this is his first feature film, and it's currently streaming on Sony Live. Now, this one absolutely blindsided me. I mean, it is brutal. Two government school teachers in a remote part of Maharashtra are entrusted with taking up census work, and they come across one lonely house where the people seem to be super weird, right? And what this movie does is it's really good at building up the tension, and very easy to identify and empathize with the two main leads, the women who are ultimately stuck in this strange house with these weirdos. And there is it also puts up a magnifying glass to your casual sexism and misogyny. And one of the women is routinely abused and threatened with physical violence by her father because she doesn't want to give up her job as a teacher once she gets married. Her fiance, the man that she's engaged to, is casually sexist, talking about how he's got offers for marriage coming out of right, left and center, and also asks her, who's going to marry you if I don't? And the other girl is constantly physically abused by her elder brother, and probably just for the reason that he can. No other particular reason. He's seen his father beat up his mother, and he's doing the same thing with his sister. So both these women are educated, they're government school teachers, they're oppressed at home, their mothers have been oppressed at home, as we find out later, and they end up in this house filled with these perverted weirdos. And it's a difficult watch. There should be trigger warnings, plenty of trigger warnings. The violence itself, the gore it's alright. I mean, it's not particularly shocking, but a lot of the content could really trigger you. The movie's tagline says, not for the faint of heart, and for once that's actually true. Even if you are a hardened veteran of genre films, this one's still going to be a tough watch. But watch it, you should, because it's really good. I'd say my second favorite horror movie to come out of India this year. Good stuff. Welcome Home. It's currently streaming on Sony Live. Check it out. Okay, number 9, we've got a movie called 1BR. Now, this one's another debut-run director. There are quite a few of these on this list. I don't know how that happened, but it looked like quite a few of these directors in these 10 movies are all making their debuts this year. This one's about a slightly naive, innocent girl who's moved from small-town America to Los Angeles to work as a costume designer. And she moves into this apartment building, and everything looks to be too good to be true. And since we are talking about horror movies, then you've probably guessed that things were too good to be true. Yep, for sure. She gets dragged into this cult and blah blah blah, and a lot of stuff happens which I don't want to give away. But if you like movies like The Invitation, Karen Kusuma's brilliant The Invitation, then you should probably check this one out. It's not as good, but it's still very very entertaining as far as horror movies are entertaining, or as far as weirdo cults can be entertaining to watch on the screen, not in person. Yeah, so that's number 9, 1BR, and check that one out too. Number 8 is a movie called She Dies Tomorrow. This one's directed by Amy Seimetz. This is a second feature film as far as I know, but the first one that I've seen. And what happens here is, in this town, this woman suddenly starts to get this feeling that she's going to die tomorrow. And then that feeling turns out to be contagious, and everybody that she comes in contact with starts developing the same feeling. The people that her contacts come in contact with start developing the same feeling. So, it is kind of metaphorical for our times, I guess. But it's also done in this very dreamlike, experimental way, which was normally, I don't like these kinds of movies. Slow, dreamlike, kind of experimental, lots of different colors flashing on the screen, and it all just looks a little pretentious. But there was something about this movie that just totally grabbed me. Maybe because of the times we're living in, with the pandemic and everything else, and the contagion that's spread worldwide. But yeah, this one's really recommended if you like the slightly artier side of horror. She Dies Tomorrow, number 8, directed by Amy Seimetz, and I think that's a name we should keep an eye out for in the future. Number 8, all the way from Russia, another debutant director, and Igor Abramenko. Right now, this one's called Sputnik, and at first glance, I thought this was going to be a sort of alien ripoff. A couple of cosmonauts up in space, they land on Earth, they've brought something back with them, or maybe something has decided to hitch a ride with them. But where it goes with this concept is into entirely, I wouldn't say new, these issues have been addressed before, but into entirely unexpected ways, right? So on first contact, would humans actually put out a hand of friendship with aliens, or would we capture them, experiment on them, and just kill them? Yeah, and how do we treat our army and our soldiers? There are a lot of different concepts, but there's a fair bit of gore. The alien looks great. It does a really good job of slowly building up the tension till the final bit, and yeah, it's really worth a watch. I like this movie a lot. Sputnik, directed by Igor Abramenko, and that's another name we should keep an eye out on for the future. Really, really good stuff. Sputnik at number 7. Number 6 was a movie that was probably my most anticipated movie of last year. Richard Stanley, the South African born, British raised, actually South African raised, I guess, maverick movie maker who made Dust Devil and Hardware back in the 80s, who made tons of strange but really, really captivating documentaries, was coming back with his feature film, and it was going to be based on H.P. Lovecraft's Color Out of Space short story, and it starred Nicolas Cage in it, and this should have been a home run, right? It should have been absolutely brilliant, or at least that's what I was expecting. But I guess my expectations were a little too high, because what should have been my number 1 movie of the year is actually down at number 6. It's still very good. I still loved it, but it could have been way better than it actually was. And if you've read the story, a meteor comes from outer space, lands at this place, and there's tons of Lovecraftian references for the fans and blah blah blah. But essentially, what's the main thing that I found wrong with this was Nicolas Cage. In Mandy, which another movie of Nicolas Cage's that I really, really liked, he goes from a scale of 0 and slowly takes that up to 12 on the weirdness scale. in Color Out of Space, he starts at about 8. So even at the start of the movie, he is a weird character, right? And then there's really not much place for his character to get weirder. So he goes up to about 11 or 12, but that's still not a huge transition for this character to make. And that for me was one of the biggest problems probably the only problem I had with Color Out of Space. And but overall, the physical effects are brilliant. The actual colors that have been used are really, really good. It's kind of like a maroonish, pinkish, indigo-ish, whatever, but it looks really, really good. And Jolie Richardson as Cage's wife is great. The two kids who've done a really, really good job. And like I said, the physical effects are brilliant. The CGI is alright, it kind of shows off the low budget, but the physical effects more than make up for it. It's weird, it's bloody, it's horrific, and it's a really good film. In spite of my reservations with Cage's interpretation of the role, it's still a really, really good film. Number 6, Color Out of Space by Richard Stanley. Oh yeah, if you haven't seen any of his earlier work, check out Dust Devil, check out Hardware, and also check out any of his documentaries and interviews. He's a fascinating guy. Alright, so heading into the top 5, my second and last Indian entry. This one's in Tamil and it's called Andhagaram, which means darkness. Directed by another Devirant director, Vignarajan or V. Vignarajan, and this one's streaming on Netflix. Now, let me disclaimer right at the start. This is a 3-hour movie, okay? A 3-hour horror movie with we are following 3 different characters: a psychiatrist, a blind librarian who also dabbles in the occult, and a cricket coach who's currently going through a bit of a rough patch, or a very rough patch. And all 3 of them are connected with by an old-fashioned rotary telephone that might be haunted. You never know. Now, Andhagaram was absolutely brilliant. I totally loved this film. Right? It's shot beautifully. It looks like a classic noir, and the movie, even though it's 3 hours long, you'd never actually feel it. Right, and looking back at it, there's not much here that I would cut out to make it shorter or more compact. It is stylish, but the story works. All 3 characters, the 3 main characters, work, and the scenes of the actual rituals, the occult rituals, if you will, the driving the demons out of a home, those are done. There's a rare sense of authenticity to these scenes. Not that I believe in any of that stuff, but yeah, from what I've heard and from what I've seen with tantrics and shit, this stuff looks real for what it's worth. Yeah, and it's well acted, it's beautifully directed, and this is a movie that I really don't want to give away any spoilers as far as the story goes, but if you're up for it, it's going to be 3 hours very well spent. Just don't look for any kind of gore or jump scares or any of that. It's not that kind of movie. It is essentially a mood piece or a noir horror, if you will, and dabbling in the supernatural, dabbling in the dark side of the mind, and yeah, it's a brilliant movie. Just check it out. It's streaming on Netflix. Andhagaram at number 5. Alright, number 4, heading into the home stretch. Joko Anwar is back this year, or rather last year in 2020, and along with him came Tara Basro from Satan's Slaves, his last blockbuster horror movie, and this time in 2020 they did a movie together called Untitled. Now this one's probably folk horror, I guess, and it's really good. I like this more than Satan's Slaves, and just a really, really fine movie. Tara Basro can act, she looks great, and essentially it starts off with her and her best friend working as toll booth attendants, when out of nowhere, in a terrific opening scene, this dude comes and tries to kill her with a machete. And then, but of course he's addressing her by a different name, and when they ask, or when they find out that he's come from this village, and Yeah, so just another bad decision, if you will, that is kind of like a horror movie trope. We wouldn't have horror movies if people didn't make horrible decisions. So they set off, Tara and her friend decide to set off to the village to see what's what and what set that attack off. And there's a little bit of greed involved as well to see if maybe since I'm there, maybe there's some money in it somewhere. So off they go. And things don't end well. Well, who would have guessed it, right? But it is in the realm of folk horror. It's beautifully shot and it's well acted. And without giving too much away, this is a movie that, yeah, you should check out. It's very, very good. Don't let the subtitles hold you back. Actually, for any of these movies that I've mentioned that are not in English, don't let the subtitles hold you back. Check these movies out. Check Impetigo out because it's like 2 hours well spent. Number 4, Impetigo. Okay, for number 3, Elizabeth Moss is probably one of my favorite actors going right now. And in 2020, she had 2 terrific performances. First was in Shirley, a fictional biopic of the writer Shirley Jackson. Very controversial, and I have no idea what fictional biopic means. But basically, they took the writer's life, added a few extra ingredients, made it seem like she was a bit cuckoo, and it turned out to be a really good movie. And Moss was absolutely fantastic in it. I'm not particularly invested in the writer, although she has written some good books. But so if you are, then you may want to avoid this movie entirely. But the movie that I want to talk about for the list at number 3 is Elizabeth Moss in The Invisible Man. Written by Leah Whannell, who also wrote Saw and a whole bunch of other movies recently, big horror blockbuster kind of movies. But The Invisible Man is brilliant, and it's held together by Moss and her central performance as this woman who's convinced that her abusive dead boyfriend is not actually dead, but he's figured out a way to make himself invisible. And I won't tell you more than that, but Moss just holds this movie together, and it's really, really good. And a must see for horror fans, really. And yeah, just really good stuff. Number 3, The Invisible Man, starring Elizabeth Moss. Alright, at number 2, we've got VFW, which stands for Veterans of Foreign Wars. This one's directed by this guy called Jeff Begos, not Bezos, Begos, Begos, who's made quite a name for himself in the horror indie circuit over the last 6-7 years. I think 2013 was his first film, Almost Human, which received some good reviews, and low budget tribute to Grindhouse kind of thing, but worth a watch if you can find it. Then in 2019 he made Bliss, which was a really, really good psychedelic horror kind of movie. Again, very low budget, very indie, but definitely worth a watch. And then as a follow-up, his third feature film directorial was VFW, where now this movie itself stars a whole bunch of familiar faces from the 70s and 80s, B-grade and C-grade movies mainly. Fred Williamson's in it. He must be pushing 80, but he still looks like he could punch you into next week. And Stephen Lang's the main character, a very believable older tough guy. And the movie itself is set in a not so distant American dystopian future. The opioid crisis has blown out of proportion. It's destroyed communities. It's destroyed the country pretty much. A bunch of old veterans are hanging out in their VFW bar, enjoying a drink on a quiet evening when suddenly they're under siege by this gang, basically. And the movie itself is like a very loving tribute that pays homage to a lot of movies, but mainly Assault on Precinct 13, John Carpenter's debut and all-round classic, and Romero's Night of the Living Dead, right? And it does that very, very well. The physical effects are superb. It's gory, it's brutal, it's political in the sense that it has a few things to say. And regardless of whether you agree with those viewpoints or not, VFW makes for a very, very entertaining ride. So at number 2 is VFW. Check this one out, especially if you like gory action movies. There's nothing supernatural about this one. So why did I put it in the horror list? Because it is essentially a tribute to zombie movies, right? Without it, where the zombies are replaced by drug-addled gang members. So yeah, VFW at number 2. Finally, at number 1, the son of David Cronenberg, Brandon Cronenberg, returns to feature-length movie making. 2012, I think, or 2013 maybe, was his debut with Antiviral, which was very promising. And it's taken him a good 7-8 years to come up with his follow-up. And this one's called Possessor. And this movie is absolutely fantastic. It's got Andrea Riseborough in it, it's got Christopher Abbott, and it kind of balances between science fiction and horror and just a straight up thriller. And it's essentially about the super secret organization that's kind of like an assassination company, and where they have this technology where the assassin can basically get into the body of a person who's close to their target, and then control that body to do the killing for them, right? All while the assassin himself is far away and nowhere near the scene of the crime. Andrea Riseborough plays one of the top assassins in this company. I'm simplifying the plot a lot because there's quite a bit to chew on in the plot itself. And she's really, really good at her job, but she's also slowly losing her control. And yes, she needs to take over Christopher Abbott's body and orchestrate a hit. And this basically means that there's plenty of material to chew on. There's plenty of opportunity for scenery chewing for both Abbott and Riseborough. Andrea Riseborough, as an aside, she was brilliant in Mandy. And this is another actor that I'm really looking forward to more of. And so yeah, I think overall things go wrong, things get really, really bloody, and it all ends in an absolutely devastating climax. I mean, one of the few, I can't tell you what happens in the climax without giving away some spoilers, but yeah, Possessor at number 1, directed by Brandon Cronenberg, starring Andrea Riseborough and Christopher Abbott. All 3 names that you should keep an eye out for, regardless of genre. And yep, that's all 10 done. Hope you like the list. Let me know if I've missed anything. I could have easily made a top 20, but I figured 10 was good enough. So there are a lot of movies like His House, La Llorona, and a bunch of other movies that could have been on the list but just kind of missed out, simply because they didn't entertain me as much, to put it very, very bluntly. Yep, so that's my 10. If you like the video, go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell icon to get some notifications. Share the video, leave your comments with your own favorite horror movies of 2020. And since we're finally moving into 2021, Happy New Year, stay safe, and that's it from me. Yeah, yep, stay safe.